Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining our Chromebook Classroom webinar today. Today, we're lucky to have 4 customers joining us to talk a little bit about their Chromebook stories. But before we get into hearing from them about what their experience has been like using Chromebooks over the past few weeks, months, or even in 1 or 2 cases a year, I just want to cover some housekeeping items before we get started to make sure that everybody has the questions that they want to ask answered, and that everybody knows where to find the webinar after the event and that sort of thing. So just to get started, we are recording today's webinar, and we'll send out a link to the recorded version to everybody following the event, just so that you can catch up and revisit any particular areas that you have more questions about. Also, throughout the webinar, please feel free to ask any questions that you have in the Q&A chat box. We'll pass them along to our customers as they're telling their stories, so that we can make sure that they answer any questions that you have as well. Before we kick things off, going into the customers, I just want to ready to again ask questions in the Q&A box, and happy to have you join us. We'll be sending out the webinar following the event, and we're all set to get started. Just to give a brief introduction to who we have joining us today. In the way that the format will work is that we'll spend about 10 to 15 minutes with each of these customers, and have them talk a little bit about how they've been using Chromebooks in their classroom, why they chose Chromebooks, the good things that they found about Chromebooks, the things that have been challenging for them to get started, and just their overall experience. So joining us today, we have Mikkel, Brian, and Jason from Leiden School District in the Chicago area. We have Diana Foley from Rocky River City School District. We have Joe Wood from San Juan Unified School District. And Rachel Cheney will be joining us shortly from the Oregon Desert Education Services District. So start by hearing a little bit from the folks at Leiden about what their experience has been like using the Chromebooks, and I'll give them about 5 minutes to give us a quick introduction to how they've been using Chromebooks at their school, and then I have some questions that I'll ask of them, and if you have any questions, feel free to jump in and ask them in the Q&A box, and I'll pass them along to our customers. So with that, I'm going to pass things over to get us started.
Thank you. My name is Jason Markey. I'm the assistant principal at East Leiden. And Phil Storsley, unfortunately, couldn't be with us tonight, but Brian Weinert, our director of technology, is here, and you'll hear from him in a minute. We just wanted to get started maybe with the next slide, Ben, which is just kind of a little bit of an idea of who we are at Leiden. In the suburban Chicago area, it's not unique to have high school only districts, and that's what Leiden District 212 is. So 9 through 12 district of 2 schools, roughly about 3,500 students, and you can see our demographics there. So a fairly high percentage of students that are on free and reduced lunch, approaching 50% at our West Leiden campus. A diverse population. District-wide, we're over 50% Hispanic, at one building being almost 75%. And also a fairly high IEP population with students receiving special education services as well as LEP, so students that have limited English proficiency. And you can see the last 2 numbers under each campus there, the number of different languages spoken in the home. So we have well over 20 languages spoken in the home in both of our campuses, obviously Spanish being a primary one, but several different Eastern European languages. We have a lot of students and families coming from Eastern Europe, as well as many other areas around the world. So we're pretty fortunate to have a highly diverse population. We think that really enriches our environment and makes us kind of unique. If you want to go to the next slide, we can kind of go through just briefly. I'm not going to read through all of these necessarily. But as many other schools are doing as well right now, we're really assessing how we view students and how we view learning. The idea of looking at 21st century skills and learning in the 21st century, a little bit ironic because we all know we're 10% through the century already, and we're finally starting to adapt. But I hope the pace picks up a little bit here at Leiden and at schools all over. But we definitely are interested in looking at this idea of students having 2 separate lives. I know Mr. Weinert kind of took a Chromebook where it was exploring the idea of students living a digital life outside of school, and then going to school and living a very different life. And we're convinced that we need to make that digital life the same in and out of school. And providing them with access here at school that they can then take with them ultimately outside of the school is something that we are very interested in doing and feeling really compelled to do, feeling like we need to do that for our students, for their future, instead of like the one statement says, preparing them for their past. So we believe, very strongly in these ideas and kind of carrying forward these ideas. I'm going to pass it off to Mr. Weinert now to talk about kind of our rolling out of Chromebooks thus far.
Good morning. My name is Brian Weinert. I'm the Director of Technology for the district. And just to give you a little context, we've been pretty much researching one-to-one initiatives for a little over a year now. We're in our second year of some one-to-one pilots with classrooms that are equipped with a cart of computers. And we've chosen 7 different courses. Those 7 courses get filtered through one of the classrooms that have a cart. Now, a year and a half ago, we decided to try out netbooks, and that's what we've been using. At the start of this school year, attended a Chromebook seminar in Chicago, and I had been doing some offline research about Chromebooks as well. And we started by having a few administrators purchase units to learn a little bit more about them. And we were liking what we were learning. So then we worked with some folks there at Google, and we purchased 32 devices, Chromebooks, and got another 30 from Google, to replace books into our 11 one-to-one pilot classrooms. So this was affecting about 6 teachers and 7 classes a day in 2 different classrooms, so a couple hundred students. And we had a really, really good response from our teachers and our students. In some cases, we left the netbooks in the classroom along with the cart of Chromebooks, and allowed the teachers allowed the students to choose. And it wasn't very long before they were choosing the Chromebook over the netbook, almost on a consistent basis. We were rolling along, and we decided that we were getting serious about the Chromebook, and we decided to purchase another 47 Chromebooks to distribute not to our students, but to our actual departments. We've got about 14 or 15 different academic departments, and we wanted to get the Chromebooks into the hands of the teachers because they still didn't know much about this device. So we purchased 47 of them, basically out one book per every 5 teachers in departments. So our English department got about 6, our department got 1, and so on. And department members have been rotating the Chromebook and getting experiences with them. In some cases, they've been using them with students. In many cases, they're just learning about them on their own. Continuing, looking what we've learned so far, we just purchased another 210 Chromebooks to replace the netbooks in the rest of our one-to-one pilot courses. So we're actually going to be swapping out all of our netbooks, with the exception of our 2 math classes, which are running some specialized software that is Windows-based. But in none of our 11 one-to-one pilot classrooms, we are swapping out netbooks for Chromebooks, and we enjoyed learning about them. We've liked everything that we've learned. You can see a statement there that basically we've determined that the Chromebook can do almost 80 to 90% of what we're doing now, but it does it 100% of the time, and it does it well. The 8-second startup, the 8-hour battery life, these are not small things. These are huge for us in our environment. Ben, you probably got some questions. I think we had maybe one more slide to show here. We can get the questions. Just to kind of give you an idea, we are seriously considering moving to a full one-to-one initiative next year, and our definition of one-to-one is getting a device in every one of our kids' hands that's at school and actually take home with them. And we're working very hard on finalizing that proposal for our Board of Education, which is coming up in the next couple of weeks. And the book is our device of choice for this initiative. So I think I'll stop there. And Ben, you said you've got some questions for Jason and I.
Sure. Thank you both for the great intro. I think that was it's really interesting to hear about how you looked at Chromebooks first and tried them out and really are expanding the pilot program that you have in place. So I'm going to start just with a few questions that I have after hearing your presentation, and then we'll jump into some questions that I see coming across in the talk. So just to get things started, I think you mentioned some of the reasons for choosing Chromebooks initially, and kind of how you heard about them through the Chicago seminars and places like that. But I'm a little bit curious. When we think about Chromebooks, we think that really the key features for school is the ability to, like you said, have the Chromebooks instant and have a really good intuitive user experience for the people actually using the Chromebooks, but also kind of the ease of management and the ability to scale out programs much more broadly. Could you talk a little bit about whether those factors came into play at all, and kind of any challenges that, as a district, with already some one-to-one programs in place, you see with going from your current one-to-one programs to much broader one-to-one programs?
I think those are huge factors in our decision. The rollout and the deployment of the device is, I'm the Director of Technology in the district for, this is my 11th year now, and I can say that it's the easiest device to deploy anything that we have in the past. We've traditionally been a Windows-based district, at least the last 18 years that I've been in the district. And we have a lot of labs. We have some mobile carts in departments. We have some mobile carts in our libraries. We have a lot of technology around. The management of that, from hardware, software, and network perspective, is a challenge. We've had to build up our tech departments in order to support it. I can say the most difficult thing about the Chromebook to deploy was probably the unboxing, and not a little thing. Setting up a lab, whether it's desktops or laptops, out of the box to actual deployment environment that we've experienced would take on the unboxing, the setup, imaging, and you were talking probably about anywhere between 25 and 30 hours to get a single cart or lab up and running. With the Chromebooks, I actually didn't even impose on the rest of my tech staff this on myself, and I had the 30 ready to go in under 2.5 hours. I said probably the most difficult thing was the boxing. If you guys can figure out a way to ship them instead of one in a box, that would take that away. So then the management of it, the control panel, the Google Apps control panel. They are a Google Apps district. That's probably an important thing to note, that we've been using Google Apps since a full year now, and integrates so well, including the Chrome OS management within the Google Apps control panel. And while it's still relatively young, and there's not a lot, the right things are there for us to get going. And just simple things of being able to proxy server and turn off guest mode and push out web apps and extensions and list and whitelist other web apps and extensions from a very easy interface that's web-based has been huge for us.
Great. No, that's good to hear. And for the folks who may not be familiar with all those the management features and kind of the more behind-the-scenes aspect of the Chromebooks, I would encourage you to check out the recorded webinars that we have available, because those provide a bit more depth into those if you're joining us for the first time with this webinar. So just a quick aside there. One question, then I want to make sure that we get to to the other folks as well, and we'll have time for more questions at the end. But maybe you could quick provide some examples of what students are doing in the classroom, and maybe 1 or 2 examples of the 20% of things that you cannot do on a Chromebook, and how students and teachers have either gotten around those or what they've done, and they've kept being able to use technology despite those challenges.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we looked at with the Chromebooks, and we are using Google Apps. I saw that question come through. We started using Google Apps with our students just this year, so it's something new. And the biggest thing that is the seamless integration with all the Google Apps. The fact that once a student logs into the machine, which again just takes a few seconds, then they're instantly in their Google Docs, they're in their calendar, they're in their Gmail, any other associated account to their Gmail or their Google Apps account that's instantly in. That in and of itself, just those Google Apps have been a huge part of our curriculum very early going, and that's without a lot of our classrooms having as much access to the devices, our one-to-one rooms. So our teachers have done everything from, they've had our students share collections with the teacher. So every time a student is working on an assignment, it's put in a collection and it's automatically shared with the teachers. Some of our teachers have actually given students assistance on their writing as they're in the writing process. They might be going on at night and see a student's in a document, the student might be writing, and they actually give them some feedback with the in comments as the student is working. So, I mean, that's been a huge plus for all of our teachers. A couple of our teachers have said just the use of Google Apps has been the biggest innovation in their teaching career, just because it gives that sort of access, it gives that sort of real-time feedback to students that's just impossible to do in a traditional environment. Also, one of the reasons we like the Chromebook as opposed to going with more of a traditional piece of hardware, whether it's a Windows-based or a Macintosh-based system, is that it just gets you to the web. It means it just opens up the door to all sorts of possibilities and doesn't necessarily box in your thinking to just doing PowerPoints or just doing movies or something in one of those environments. Now, you can get to the web on any of those devices. Being, quote, limited to the web really has expanded what our teachers and our students have used. And now we're seeing our teachers more think about what they want kids to know and what they want kids to demonstrate, and not just necessarily assigning a tool. And I think we hope that's where we're going to get to, where students or the teachers give an assignment and they want some end product, but they don't necessarily have to tell the student it has to be a PowerPoint or it has to be whatever the application is. We want this as a product. We want you to demonstrate learning or demonstrate something, and then the students can find whatever product they see works best. And so we used all sorts of web-based applications this year, just in the past 2 months, that in the past several years we haven't used as much, I think just because of that. As far as some of the applications that we've found that aren't compatible with Chromebooks, the math application Sketchpad Pro, which is an application that's software-based, is something that's not right now. It doesn't work because it is a software-based program. It has to be loaded on a traditional computer. There's a science program called Logger Pro put up by Veneer, which is data collection using probes in a science classroom environment primarily. Those are the 2 big ones. Obviously, Microsoft Office was used by many of our teachers. Now we've really shifted many of those to Google Apps, and in the future would be purely Google Apps for our students.
One thing that I'd like to add to that is that our one-to-one research, regardless of the device that we would have chosen for our students, there was never a plan in our district to provide a lot of those software-based things for our students on their device. We are going to have other solutions that we currently have in place or that we'll have to modify in order to deliver those experiences in some of the software that those students need. It's a really big factor in our decision to look strongly at the Chromebook, because we knew that we would install Sketchpad on every single student's device. The cost of all of the different software applications and the management of that was not something realistic in our district. So for us, find the best device that did the most things that we would then augment with those other solutions is we were focusing on, and that's why the Chromebook jumped to the top.
Great. Well, thank you guys very much for that intro and the questions. It's great to hear how things are working so far and how the expand plans are shaping up as well. So thank you very much. And we'll come back and we'll have some more questions for you at the end, I think. Next, I want to introduce Dan Foley. And Dr. Foley is the Executive Director of Communications and Organizational Development at Rocky River City School District. And they've been using Chromebooks for a few weeks now, and I just want to ask her to provide a little bit of background as to what the district was looking like from a technology perspective before the Chromebooks, how the Chromebooks have kind of fit in, and how they're working so far in the first few weeks. So, Dr. Foley, I'll pass things over to you.
All right. Good morning, everybody. We had a strategic plan drawn up several years ago, and one of the items on the strategic plan was to make sure that all students had equal access to technology. And we started looking at one-to-one initiatives to see what might work for us. And we had a lot of concern about just giving each student a laptop device. And our primary concerns was we only have one person who does break fix in the district, and we're not going to be able to add to our IT department. So the idea of having to manage and support all of the devices and breakage and loss and so forth was really daunting. Our staff has used Google Apps for Education for 3 years now. This is our second year with our students in grades 3 through 12 having a Google Apps for Education account. So we've been following the Google products to see how they can work for our district. And so the Chromebooks were first announced last spring. We were very interested to see if this might be something that would work for us. So what we decided we would do is we would pilot one classroom set in our middle school. And we started with our middle school because we passed a bond issue a year ago and are doing some facility updates, and our middle school got wireless this past summer. So it was a perfect opportunity. And I wanted to do, instead of having the heart of Chromebooks that teachers would check out and use for a period or use every other day, I really wanted to embed them in the classroom. So our pilot, we just had a 6th grade English teacher finish. She had them for 3 weeks in her classroom, so she knew that she always had them during those days. She didn't have to go and check them out, get them from the media center, and really plan her lessons around knowing she had those tools available. Part of what we asked the teachers who did participate in the pilot was that they would give feedback, and also that they would have their students give feedback, because we really wanted data from a lot of different sources before we looked at purchasing a large number, which for us would be about 1,200 Chromebooks. So the 6th grade English teacher, a 7th grade social studies teacher currently has them. Then they're going on to an 8th grade Spanish teacher, and some other teachers like career and college awareness and different subject levels. So the fact that we've gotten is very similar to what you just heard. The size of them, as in that picture, they fit on the desk, and there's still room if the student needed to have a notebook or a book open as well. So that's big for us. The quick on-off battery life, ease of use. The students, just reading the students' comments, it was really interesting because they love them, but they are able to articulate why they love using them. It made, especially for in the English class, it made their writing much easier. One said had more time to actually write because she wasn't writing longhand, going home, typing it into a word processing program, and then doing revisions with a friend at school the next day. She was able to do writing in class, share with a peer, do peer comments on it. The collaboration increased dramatically. The students also felt that they loved having less paper, and they felt more involved with the instructional process because they really wanted to find out, how did you work differently, or how was instruction given differently? So all those positives, absolutely. And on the side of the teacher as well, the feedback from the one teacher who's done it so far, she felt that she looked at instruction in a different way, and that students were able to be more active participants in the instructional process. It wasn't, she didn't have the stage, so to speak, as much. The negatives that the students had, some of them found the trackpad difficult to use, and I think that could be for various reasons. And I've had some conversations with some people at Google who know that this is something that's being worked on. I think just for some sixth graders, they're not used to it, or maybe it's fine motor skills. And I think we would definitely, if we did implement the larger program, allow students to bring in a mouse or have some available for those people who needed it. The other big thing, I think, for us, especially as we look in using it in a foreign language program, is the ability for students to record audio and video for projects. We don't have Google Voice enabled for the students, and I've had several conversations with Google. I'm not aware right now of a way that they could record their French exercises and share it with a teacher so she could listen to them. So what we're thinking of, instead of giving each student a laptop, we are looking at purchasing classroom sets of Chromebooks for grades 6 through 12 and having them in English, social studies, foreign language, SLED classrooms, because our science labs already have computers and they have the probeware software that the other gentleman was speaking about. And our math teachers don't feel that they would need them enough to have an actual class set, and so that frees up the labs for them to use. So we put a request into the board, and the pilot being successful, I'm hoping that we'll be able to move forward with this in the spring.
Great, that's really exciting, and I think the student comments are really interesting, and also it's good to hear the negatives as well. We definitely take those back to the team, and the trackpad is an immense area of focus, and also making it very easy to record audio and video. I think it might be possible through YouTube to do those audio and video recordings, but we definitely want to make that as easy as possible. So thank you very much. I have a few questions for you, and I'm going to take a little bit of a different angle, just based on what I'm seeing in the chat box. And one question that's come up a few times is just around bandwidth requirements. So you mentioned that the school had gotten Wi-Fi access through a grant that had gone through previously. I was wondering, has the Wi-Fi that you had in place at the school been sufficient for a classroom set of Chromebooks, the computers that are heavily dependent on the web, or has there been other things that you've had to do to augment that bandwidth that you have in place?
No, with wireless that was installed, when speccing it out, I told them that to spec it out as if each student would have a wireless device, so they made it robust enough. Now, granted, we only have one classroom set. They assure me that there should be no problem. Great.
Is that a pretty similar approach to other technology units that you would have in place? A general guide that we give folks is, if you think of every student using a normal piece of technology and using the internet, the Chromebooks really don't use any additional amount of bandwidth than other computers using the same web-based tools would. But I just want to make sure that that's accurate based on your experience as well.
Right. So so far so good. And high school will have wireless installed as part of its update this coming summer, and our elementary buildings. So eventually all buildings will be wireless. And as we look at, we're in Ohio, and one of the reasons also that we're interested is we're going to look at online testing that the state will be requiring, which is really going to put districts in a bind if they don't have enough computers available for students to take the online testing. So we're really hoping that Chromebooks, not only for the day-to-day use of students, but that they'll be able to meet that need for the online testing and assessment.
Great. One final question. I don't know if this is the case at all. Did you try out iPads or other devices at all? And what were some of the, were the reactions of students any different to the Chromebooks than they would have been to the iPads or other pieces of technology?
We have probably, I want to say 30 or 40 iPads that have been purchased through grants that teachers have written. And I definitely see a place for iPads, especially with some of the special education students and some of the assistive technology, the apps that they use. However, as far with Chromebooks and the iPad, we're talking apples and oranges. But from a deployment standpoint, it took me 2 days to get 12 iPads set up between going to, having to visit the teacher's classroom and go to their computer and get it set up and get them configured. And iPads really aren't set up to be a one-to-many device, and it a lot of challenges with them. I mean, I love iPads. I have one. I use it all the time. But the idea of setting up 1,200 of those, I think I would just run screaming from the building. A person and I last Wednesday in an hour and a half set up 30 Chromebooks. This is huge as far as deploying them on a large scale. I wouldn't even consider doing that many iPads.
Great, very much. It's great to hear how things are going, and we love the feedback from the students as well. So thank you. Thanks for sharing that with us too.
You're welcome.
And we'll come back and have any additional questions at the end. But I'll move on to talk with Wood a little bit. And Joe is from San Juan Unified School District. He's running a special tech services pilot of the Chromebooks in classrooms there. And Joe, it'd be great to hear what your experience has been so far and how things are working out.
Sure. Well, good morning. A little bit about San Juan. We are a district located in suburban Sacramento. We have about 41,000 students. And in our district, similar to what the previous presenter talked about, we went through a strategic planning process a couple of years ago and really identified that looking at how technology was used in the classroom was a key component to that strategic planning process. But we also recognize that as such a large school district, our sites are very diverse. And as a result, they have a certain degree of autonomy in terms of what types of technology they're using in their classroom with their students. This summer here in Technology Services, we actually implemented Google Apps for Education, and through that process became familiar with the Chromebooks. And initially we were looking for a place where we could maybe sort of test them out. Historically, we've been a Macintosh district, so many of our sites have 1 to maybe 5 mobile carts of MacBooks that they use with students. More recently, we've actually been purchasing iPads as well. So we have about 1,800 to 2,000 iPads in the district right now. And we're interested in sort of looking at the Chromebook and how that integrated with our Google Apps for Education implementation. So we actually identified a K-8 site that was interested in piloting some of the Chromebooks. And so right now we have a class set of Chromebooks that have been in a 7th grade English history class. And that particular teacher also teaches an elective called AVID. And as part of the AVID elective, the students in that class have pen pals with Intel. Intel actually has a facility near us, and so the kids sort of a big brother, big sister relationship with some of their colleagues at Intel that they communicate via email. So in that particular pilot, they've been in the classroom about a month, but what we're seeing is that for the most part, the teacher is using them relating to writing workshops. So the students are studying, different types of genres, and then when they're beginning to draft their particular version of the genre, they're doing that in Google Docs, and then that's allowing for them to share their documents with one another for peer editing, but also with their teacher, so that the teacher is able to provide some conferring throughout the writing process. In this particular classroom, the students are also using the Chromebooks in their history class, because it's actually a cored class. And so in history, they're also using Google Docs and creating things like presentations. They're starting to do a little bit of data collection where they're using the spreadsheet tool. And then more recently, they've been starting to play with maps. So this particular teacher who has the devices in her classroom is actually a National Writing Project teacher who's done some work with our local National Writing Project site in the past. And National Writing Project group that we have in our district has recently been reading a book called The Digital Writing Workshop by an author named Hicks. And in that particular book, there's quite a bit of talk about how you could use online tools for use in the writing workshop process. And writing workshop is a large component to our instructional model right now. And so the Chromebooks we found have been a really nice natural fit. What's interesting at this particular school site is as we got the Chromebooks, they coincidentally also, as part of a different pilot, received a class set of iPads. And so what's ended up happening is there's a small group of teachers that are using the class set of iPads, and then there's this other particular teacher on campus who has the Chromebooks. And mainly because of some of the management issues that have already been discussed with the iPads, and then how easy it is to manage the Chromebooks, the teachers who have the iPads have been actually kind of jealous of the teacher who has the Chromebooks, and have sort of, in jest said, would it be possible for us to trade in our iPads for Chromebooks? And I think that really goes back to, management of the devices and how simple that they are to use. I agree with the previous presenter that really when you look at a Chromebook versus an iPad, in many ways we're talking about apples and oranges. They're not the same device, and when we think about it from an instructional model perspective, the Chromebooks, I see them as really being a really strong tool for that online publishing that we want students to do in the classroom, where maybe an iOS device like an iPad or an iPod Touch, we're looking at trying to differentiate learning for students and really trying to have that device belong to one particular student, and they carry it with them throughout the day, and maybe they carry it with them at home. Because our Chromebooks are integrated with our Google Apps implementation, one of the parts that's just been brilliant is kids walk in, the machines immediately boot up, they log into their Google accounts, and they're ready to go. There's no wait time. Prior to working in technology services, I was actually a science teacher at a school that had one-to-one MacBooks. And I can tell that our one-to-one MacBook situation was never as flawless and as easy to use as this Chromebook pilot has been. To a certain degree, we almost don't hear from the teacher in technology services because it is going so well. We usually just kind of have to pop by our classroom and say, hey, what's going on today? Can I sit in and watch what you and the kids are doing? Because she's really not having any sort of issues where she would need to call technology services and get us involved in any way. So we're just, I go into a classroom and we really can focus on teaching and instruction, which is great. Of all the tools that I've worked with over the last 5 or 6 years, for me, it's definitely the one that has just been so seamless and so, I don't know why you wouldn't want to use this kind of thing. The only limitations that we've really noticed is we've had a couple of kids sort of complain about the trackpad. Actually, we have this class set going on, and then within the technology services department, we have 15 that we've been sort of testing out with different systems that we have. And the adults that are using it are complaining about the trackpads. The kids, not so much, a little bit, so that's been kind of one issue. The other issue that we initially had in this particular classroom is we had some of the devices that were falling off the wireless network, but what we discovered is that we had one access point that was being shared between 2 classrooms, and this classroom was occasionally rolling in a class set of MacBooks and using that access point. So it was really just 2 devices connecting to that one access point. So simply add another access point in that particular teacher's classroom who has the Chromebooks, and we were up and running right away and haven't had a problem since.
Great. I think that it's great to hear kind of how well they're working in the classroom, and I was wondering if maybe you could elaborate more on any of the challenges that teachers have had, any workarounds that they've had to come up with. So things that maybe haven't worked out so well that you'd like to see improved over the next few months or with the next iterations.
With this particular pilot, I mean, the teacher has really been heavily focusing on the Google apps. So the kids have been using Google Docs, they've been using Google Reader and Maps. So she really hasn't, from what you shared with me, hasn't really found a limitation yet. But, listening to some of the other presenters, I'm sure that we will get to that point eventually, especially as we're looking at some of the multimedia resources. So I think kind of more than anything else, what we're definitely going to need is, an easy way to record video and audio. And it might not be beneficial for us to do it through YouTube, just because at least for a K-12 audience, YouTube has a lot of stigma associated with it. So looking at ways that, whether it's through different online products or through the device itself, can somehow, capture a little bit of video or capture a little bit of audio or take some still pictures, and then use them in those types of tools that they're making. I imagine that's going to be a limitation that we're going to eventually identify. And then, like I mentioned, with the trackpad, that's been a little bit of a struggle as well.
Great. And then one final question for you before we go on to Rachel. I think that it's interesting to hear kind of how teachers are using technology in the classroom, and kind of not even Chromebook specific, but with the iPads as well. I was wondering if you have any anecdotes of cool things that teachers are now able to do, whether they're on an iPad with the differentiated learning for different types of students, or with a Chromebook for more of the one-to-many type approach. What are some of the cool things that you've seen just observing the pilot?
Well, so with the iPads, and we have some iPod Touches where similar things going on, one of the cool things that I've seen is we have a few teachers who are screencasting their lessons. So they're taking their math lessons, and rather than recording like the whole 45-minute lesson, they're kind of screencasting that key 5 to 10-minute part of the lesson. And they're actually putting those videos on the devices. And what that allows students to do is during the independent practice portion of the lesson, they can sort of watch the lesson and get help that way while the teacher is going around the room and doing small group instruction. The teachers that I've worked with who've been doing that, what they've additionally been doing is putting on lessons from previous days as well as lessons from upcoming days. So students can go back in time to maybe a date that they were absent, or if there's a step that was taught on an earlier day that they needed to review, they can go back and review that. And similarly, if there are some students who want to push themselves forward, then they can look at future videos. On the Chromebook side, for this particular classroom that we have it in, they were not able to have this level of access to technology. With the price point of the Chromebook versus a traditional laptop, this particular school site was able to purchase these devices, whereas they would not have been able to purchase an equal number of MacBooks. And so what's allowed to happen is the devices are able to stay in that teacher's classroom, and she's really able to count them as a critical part of her instructional model on a daily basis. So the kids in that particular classroom are constantly crafting text, whether it's print-based text or things that have more of a multimodal component like a presentation or a Google Map, on an everyday basis for any particular concept that they're learning. But they're now starting to experiment with is really being able to publish for an authentic audience, initially for each other, but now as they're experimenting with sites and the way that they're sharing their documents and stuff, publishing for the entire school site to view, eventually, for the community at large to view and receive feedback in that way, which is really something that they would struggle to do with like an iOS device.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning and for the information about how the pilot's going. Definitely look forward to hearing more feedback, and hope we'll get the trackpad issue fixed very soon. I think it's interesting because a lot of it's software driven. So with each iteration of the OS that comes out over time, about every 6 weeks, we're able to fine tune that more and more. So hopefully that will become less of an issue going forward too. So thank you very much. Next, I want to move on to Rachel Cheney, who is the CIO at the High Desert Education Service District in Oregon. She has seen various deployments of Chromebooks throughout Oregon, kind of begin with a pilot program that rolled out early last year, I think in about February or March. So she's had the chance to see more longer term what Chromebooks have looked like over that longer period. So Rachel, great to hear from you about how that pilot has been going, with Crook County Middle School, and then how some of the other deployments are going as well.
Sure. Hello, everyone. And we've been at this for a while now. And last year, about this time actually, we were notified that we had reached 2 pilot sites in Oregon, one high school of about 750 students and one middle school of 750 students. So we have had a year now of experience with the Chromebooks, and I think the best way I can explain it to you in one sentence is that we're buying more. The year was successful. Diana and Joe both mentioned how easy to configure and easy to, from the technology side, these Chromebooks are. I want to second or bump what they've said, and I'll also add my own spin on it. Diana mentioned that, and I agree with her, when up iPads, and don't get me wrong, I love my iPad, but we're setting them up and looking at them in an enterprise setting. We have some really good uses for them, and we do have iPads all over the place right now, but from an enterprise level, they're hard to manage, and I think the vision is that they were never really meant to be enterprise devices, so that's fitting. With the Chromebooks, we went one step further, and we don't even configure them. We essentially give the boxes to the students. Unboxing in class. We've done this several times now. We do unboxing where the students open up the box with the computer. I have many photos of this online if you're interested. They're on Google Plus and a couple of other places. The students open the boxes. We walk them through installing the battery, and really in 20 minutes we have students ranging, the youngest we've done it with is 4th grade, all the way up through seniors in high school, who are on the internet actually already responding to blog posts and writing and publishing within one class period. And I've never seen anything like that before in my life. So thrilled at that. From the technology side, we had good wireless infrastructure in our buildings already. We have, little tweaks we have to make here as far as security protocols and things of those nature, but overall it's been an easy deployment in each of the locations we've had these in. And what's more exciting, and Joe touched on this quite a few times, is seeing them in use, both from the teacher and the student angle. And seeing those machines start up so quickly, and they're not needing to be a long login process that recaptures all of that lost time that we've been seeing in classrooms as we're trying to find the right one-to-one answers over the past decade. It was a question of, do you want to start up teams at the beginning of class so that they're ready 10 or 15 minutes into class when you're ready to teach? Or do you, on a day when you might not need the machine, then that's lost time starting it up when you didn't need it. The Chromebook answers those issues. When the student needs it, it's there and it's on. The battery life is amazing. We probably get away with charging them once every 3 days. In the middle school where we have the most, the pilot machines, we do charge those nightly. We have charging carts. I don't think that the batteries are, I'd probably get 2 to 3 days, maybe 3 to 4 days out of use with the little 10-minute and 15-minute hits during school day. In our elementary school, the keyboard and the form factor, it's a really great size for our 5th graders. Nice keyboard for them. It's a nice screen size. There are arguments about should we just be going mobile, and I think for those of us, I love my mobile technology, but there's something to be said when you're writing a research paper, or when you're writing a term paper, or when you're writing a book report, when we pull it down to the elementary school level, for that nice, 10-inch screen approximately. And then our middle school and training lab, that these machines can go into a backpack and be 15 pounds is a bonus. They're nice and light, and yet they're durable, and they answered a lot of the things that we've struggled with over the past decade. So again, to kind of sum up where we are, since so much good material has already been covered by the others, I would say that this pilot was a success. We are deploying these machines. The elementary school, the 175 machines, are being used for a Title 2D writing project. It was a 2D grant that allowed us to purchase those machines. They're being used for writing across the curriculum. Middle school, those will be used for general classwork. Those were actually purchased with district funds. We have another 2 batches that we're getting ready to purchase for some schools, and then the training lab. And we're actually looking at putting some in our libraries so that they be checked out also. So we're in love with them. They've been great, and I'll be glad to answer any questions. And while we're waiting here, I am going to jump in and answer one question of my own. As in the Q&A, and asked what we see with internet bandwidth. So as we start placing either our local network email with Gmail or our local office suites with Docs, what do our bandwidth spikes like? It must have designed these products with a very low footprint because we see very little bandwidth spike. I work with districts across the state of Oregon. We have some with tens of thousands of students who are using Google Apps, and there are not the bandwidth concerns or issues that we worried about going into these transitions.
Sorry, I was on mute earlier, so now that I can actually ask you a question. I guess, one of the things I'd be curious about, Rachel, is I know you've worked with a lot of schools across Oregon. Have there been any that have done a more student bring their own device type model, and how has that worked? And, do you see Chromebooks fit into that, or is that something that it's pretty separate? I know we haven't really heard anything about the bring your own device model today, and I'd just be curious to hear folks' perspective on that.
I can tell you my perspective. We have several districts, and especially at the high school, bring your own device programs are becoming more and more common. I fit right into that. I'll come back to that. But as we struggle with budgets, we know in Oregon that we're looking still another 3 to 5 years if we're being optimistic of the constrained budgets before we see some real growth again. So as technology level, we know that is moving to the digital space. We saw recently that Texas adopted a fully online science curriculum just the past couple weeks or so. We know that with Common Core curriculum, as we transition to this national set of standards and we ease the pressure on our publishers, so they're just creating that one set of materials, I imagine that it would be foolish if most of those were did not either have a digital component or were not almost fully digital. So no, Diana mentioned that Ohio's moving towards online testing. Oregon, we kind of went through that painful process a number of years ago. We're a little ahead of the curve on that, where our testing is online and has been for a while now. So all of these kind of events are starting to converge, and we know at the CEO level, the tech director level, the district office administrator, even down to the school principal level, that we need more technology for our students on an individual basis. And 30 seconds ago, I said how bad the budgets are. So there's a tension there. I think our own device programs have allowed us to do, and why there are several in our state and why I hear about them across the nation, it allows us to focus our resources on those students who don't have the capacity at home. So we have to find devices for every single one of our students or single one of our classrooms that take that pool of money and it slices it much thinner. Start looking at bring your own device, since a lot of people honestly, emotionally want to bring their own device anyway. If we start looking at ways to actually encourage that and put good policies in place around that, that frees up the amount of support that we can provide for those families who can't do that. So I think yes, we are seeing that. Chromebooks fit in that beautifully because of the cost factor, the ease factor, and the fact that you aren't spending money on top of the machine purchase for software and licenses. So actually working on policies and some programs around just this type of issue, and I hopefully be able to speak more publicly about it in coming months.
Great. So one final question. I think, just for folks who've asked questions in the Q&A box, thank you for our guests for responding to many of those, and we'll be following up and send out a transcript of those Q&A questions with answers to all of them as well. So if you have a question that hasn't been answered yet, we'll definitely make sure that you get an answer in that Q&A box. Rachel, one final question I have for you is kind of on the durability of the device. And you've seen the CR48s and the Samsung devices that are available commercially. And I know you've seen some of the Acer devices as well. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about the durability of a Chromebook, how that stands up against other devices that you've used in the past, or whether there's anything there that's interesting.
I think, guys, that's always a tricky question in schools, especially when we talk about, and I think on middle school boys, and I don't, no offense, any people, and if I have sons who are middle school boys, they are tough on machines. So I think durability-wise, I give anyone the impression they're bulletproof, because we had a couple that have been put in a backpack with a football and 50 pounds of textbooks and stuffed a bus seat on the way to a football game, and we've had to do some repairs. That I think would be the case with any of the laptops. In fact, we've had more traditional laptops who have done over the years than we had Chromebooks the past year. Durability, I have 2 48s and 2 Samsungs and 1 Acer that have been in daily use and around in backpacks with those middle school boys for almost a year now, and they are still functioning beautifully. They actually are still the go-to machine for both of those boys, and I think overall the machines are very solid. They're not throwaway machines, and I expect that we'll see the same or maybe just a little less of a repair rate on those than we did on the Lenovo laptops and the Gateway laptops that we had in the past.
All right. Well, I think we're just about out of time. So this was excellent, and I really appreciate everybody joining us today, both the guests and the folks who came to hear from the guests. We'll follow up with all the questions that came up in the Q&A box, and I'd also like to see about doing another one of these in the future. It was really good to hear the feedback from everybody, and I think for other folks to have the chance to hear about what your experiences have been like, over the past month or a few weeks with more recent deployments to up to a year with some of the longer deployments as well, and just kind of how things have evolved over those periods of time. So thank you all very much again for joining us today. We'll be following up with the transcript and with the recorded version of the webinar, and we look forward to seeing you at one of our future webinars as well. So thank you again, and talk to you soon.